There's no combination of words scarier than Netflix live action anime. Just saying those words maybe put some vomit in the mouths of many of you watching. It's like audible epicac. It is historically a disaster. And not just Netflix live action anime, but taking any anime and making a live action is always a huge risk that very rarely pays off. For nearly 2 decades, we suffered the curse of terrible adaptations, just unbearable vile stink, like Dragon Ball Evolution. God rest the soul of all spectators who were subjected to that torture. But recently, it's been kind of changing a bit, most notably with the One Piece live action Netflix series, which many of you know I was a firm non-believer in. I was 100% R-atheism, wiggling my finger. No, actually, that gospel doesn't make any sense. You can't take One Piece and make a good live action out of it. And how wrong I was. When I finally watched it, my heart grew 3 sizes like the Grinch, and now I do think it is possible, but with the right team in place. And that brings us to today, with me sitting in your lap, bouncing up and down, ready to share my opinion on Netflix live-action Yu Yu Hakusho adaptation. It came out a little less than 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately flew under the radar for most people. Now, Yu Yu Hakusho is an anime series I've talked about a lot for a long time. It was one of the first anime I watched along with Dragon Ball Z, and the show really kind of blew my mind. It was my first entry into darker kinds of content, I suppose, which is a really stupid thing to say now, but as a child, you had things like demons in here, which to me was like super taboo, like demons from hell? Or, excuse me, from heck? Ooh, goodness gracious. And blood? Oh, and Yusuke Urameshi, the main character, used to say things like, "I'm gonna beat your ass," and I was like, "Ass? Doesn't he mean butt? You can't say ass on television." Oh, goodness gracious, zoinks. It was a really, important show to me. So this had massive shoes to fill, and I had no hope for it whatsoever. I had my doubts. And now that it's here, I can tell you, it's better than I expected, but it's also not amazing. So, what they did is they condensed basically 70 episodes worth of the anime into 5 episodes for the Netflix adaptation here, which means the entire narrative was doomed for failure. They had absolutely no opportunity to breathe any level of depth into the characters, so if you're not familiar with Yu Yu Hakusho going into it, you will not give a fuck about any of the really flat, non-fleshed out characters that are presented here, which is a damn shame. The plot to the show is like if you asked someone who watched Yu Yu Hakusho on Toonami when they were a kid to try and recall the most important moments of the first 70 episodes, that's what would have been spit here, just like the most notable highlight moments of it just haphazardly thrown together. So there is no actual building of character relationships at all. Things just happen immediately because they need to get to the next part. Nothing feels earned. It feels more like you're being pushed through a Yu Yu Hakusho amusement park ride and catching some of the best of highlight moments as you're going through. It's just none of the emotional weight that was present in the show, or really none of the actual building up to anything is in the show. Everything just happens lickety-split. We're moving a million miles per hour because they just didn't have a whole lot of time here. Everything is so tight, tighter than my bussy. Like, they had 70 episodes that they needed to somehow make a story for and fit into 5, while capturing all of the moments that you would want to see in live-action Yu Yu Hakusho, which, to their credit, they did do. They did have most of the biggest moments that I would have liked to see live-action. They did have them here, and they actually did look great. I'm going to get to all the compliments in a moment. I want to get my biggest complaint out of the way here. It's really just how rushed everything is. As a fan of Yu Yu Hakusho, you're going to start questioning, like, oh, yikes, why would they do that? Why is that happening? Like, they have tiddlywinks of lore from Yu Yu Hakusho that need to be there, but they're not there in the way they should be, so it just doesn't really work when taking 70 episodes and making 5 out of it. It's just, that's disastrous. But I think it's only a problem people will have if they like Yu Yu Hakusho going into this. If you didn't ever read the manga or watch the anime, I don't know how you'll respond to it. I've only mainly seen reviews from fans of Yu Yu Hakusho that have checked this out because, like I said, this flew super under the radar, so it hasn't hit like a mainstream audience that's unfamiliar with it. So right now it's mainly people like me who love Yu Yu Hakusho that are pretty disappointed that they went this direction with their plot. By far the biggest like capital crime, like an unforgivable sin, is they have the Dark Tournament in the live action by like episode 3. The Dark Tournament arc in Yu Yu Hakusho, I think, is the best tournament arc in any anime ever. Period. It still holds up extremely well to this day. And that's here in the live action, kind of. They skip everything except the end. So the Dark Tournament's there, and they immediately fast forward to the very end. Granted, the very end of the Dark Tournament arc is the most hype, and it's super hype in the show, but like, come on. If you're skipping all of that, you miss so much character building, so many great fights, so many great moments, and a lot of absolutely crucial, crucial character pieces. It's just, a bit of a miss there to do that. But again, I get why, because they only had 5 episodes to work with. I can't help but be a little disappointed narratively from everything here. But with all of that out of the way, let me get to what I liked about it. And there is quite a bit. I think this is one of the most stylish, like, action shows I've watched in a while. I love the fight choreography here. From the very beginning, in episode 1, it becomes clear that they're trying to do something pretty special when it comes to their action. Actually, even aside from just its action, they really stylize everything in a really cool way. All of their visuals are super impressive and pretty unique. Just from the very beginning, too, like when Yusuke sacrifices himself to save the life of a child who's playing in the street and about to be hit by a truck. What I expected to happen would be following the anime where he like dives in front, pushes the kid out, and then like fade to black, you hear the car crash, and then it's his corpse like, no! Well, that is not how it unfolds in the live action. They said none of that Weenie Hut Jr. garbage. So what happens in live action is he pushes the kid out of the way, and he gets blasted by the truck, and they don't pull any punches on it. So you see him get hit by a truck and then get caught under the wheels. So then the truck starts bouncing over his corpse as he's like tumbling, getting all scratched up, scraped up, blood pouring out of his skull. And they never like cut away from it or use any camera tricks. It actually just looks like somebody getting hit by a fucking truck. I wouldn't be surprised if a story came out next week where they interview the stuntman that they just hit with this vehicle and filmed. It looks that realistic to me. Like, I've never seen something like that captured in that way, especially not for a live action anime. They did go hard. And even outside of just spectacular choreography, and again, the choreography really is super hype, every fight in this show is pretty gorgeous and pretty beautiful. They don't just go for standard approach to fights, they make a spectacle out of it. Like, I was blown away by just how good the fights were. And what's wild is the CGI is also pretty good. This is something I always say never works in live action because it's always going to look corny or more like an Adobe After Effects from a student project thing when you're trying to take like a spirit gun and put the spirit gun effects on it. It works in anime because, obviously, but when you have a real person and like CGI on it, that shit is always looking fucking trash. Actual dog nuts. But somehow, in here, they kind of nail it. Like the spirit gun and all of the other moves that I kind of expected to be really laughably bad looking really hit. Like, they look very good. I'm shocked at how great they were able to make the CGI look in this show. So hats off to them for that, because it didn't look corny or stupid at all when they're using some of their biggest moves, their flashiest moves that require CGI. It kind of slaps. Really, the show overall has all of these extremely tasty, flavorful ingredients that should have made for a wonderful dish, but the recipes just kind of trash the plot, the narrative that holds it all together. It's just taking so much and condensing it so quickly into such a short period of time. You can't really tell a good story with good characters. You just don't have time to. It's such a fucking shame, because everything else I really do think is pretty solid overall. Like, to give you another example, like, I'm of course still speaking from the perspective of someone who really likes Yu Yu Hakusho, so maybe these aren't complaints that someone that's never watched it will have, but the biggest one that stands out to me as like a wow, they're really rushing this, is Ginkai gives Yusuke the orb. And in the live action anime, it's basically no big deal. It's basically a handshake at that point. It's just like, hey, here it is. Okay, cool, thanks, Ginkai. Appreciate it. In the anime, getting to that point is no easy journey, and when Ginkai finally does give that orb, it is an extremely emotional moment that leads to a very, very, very important series of things that unfold. I'm trying not to spoil things, even though it's a super old anime. I still always recommend it. So if you've never seen Yu Yu Hakusho, definitely fucking watch the anime. But seeing a moment like that, which is such a big deal in the anime, come to life in the live action, what a wet fart. Like, I can't even say it came to life. They basically necromancied it and brought back a fucking soulless husk of that moment. Like, at that point, why even include it? You could have just gone a different direction entirely. Like, I think it's just really insulting to take something like that and do it the way it does in the live action. But once again, I've said this 3 times now, this is just from someone who really likes the anime. If you've never seen it, that might not be an issue to you, and you might think that that moment in the live action is cool. I don't really know. But I really wish if they were going to do this, they gave it more time. Like, maybe with 8 episodes, they could have had it breathe a bit more and offer more depth here. But 5 is just, that was never going to work. You'd need a whole season just to do the Dark Tournament arc if you wanted to follow the show in any, like, meaningful capacity. And I know that that's extremely expensive and was never going to happen. I just really wish they had a few more episodes to try a bit harder too. But overall, what they put out, I don't hate. Like, I actually like it far more than I thought I would. But you really have to just separate it entirely from the source material, because it's basically cameos at this point. Like, it doesn't really follow the source material. They're just cameos from the source material in there, and it uses the same characters and same world. So, like I said, I think it's good mainly because it is carried heavily by its amazing action. Also, the acting I thought was really good for the most part overall. I want to mention that. I thought all of the performances felt pretty true to the characters, I will say. Like, I appreciated that. But it's carried by its action and its visuals, and I would have liked if they had a better plot around it. Even if you don't want to follow the source material that closely, I still think you could have done more to offer depth to the characters or the plot. So, yeah. Just wanted to give my thoughts on Yu Yu Hakusho live action. I think it's probably worth watching as a fan of the show or as someone who just wants to watch a really fun action show. And I'm also wanting to mention that I'm shocked we're entering an age where live action anime isn't immediately dead on arrival garbage. Like, it's not just trash anymore. The One Piece live action may have ushered in this fucking golden age of good anime adaptations. It proved that you can do it, and now we've got another one here that gets pretty close to doing something special. It just falls a little flat, losing its footing in the narrative plot department. But yeah. Anyway, that's about it. So yeah.